people didn't go for one-night stands and whatnot. But you're dealing with a higher quality grade of men who simply are coming into this with the understanding that their only major focus is, okay, I got to fix my love life because the rest of my life is pretty well okay. Once Neil Strauss came out with his book, The Game, all of a sudden what was an underground self-development regime where we simply didn't tolerate low-quality people. We didn't have a need for them. We didn't tolerate them. If somebody came in and started saying things like, well, yeah, you know, I got this girl really hooked and she has a lot of money now. How can I make a living off her without having to go to work? We would hear stuff like this and it's like, get the hell out of here. We would just throw them out. After Neil Strauss's book, The Game, came out, everything that was originally underground all of a sudden surfaced. So you had guys reading the book about, how to become a pickup artist. This is so cool. You had layers all of a sudden get flooded with, instead of one new member every 3 weeks, you had like 6 new members every week. The average age went down to as low as 13 at times. You'd have a 13-year-old kid who's read The Game, and yes, he wants to be a pickup artist. This 13-year-old kid hasn't even figured out what he wants to do with the rest of his life. He's still trying to figure out who he is. He's a teenager. He's a baby. Meanwhile, he's trying to figure out how to be a pickup artist when, you know what, in about 5 or 6 years, if he had continued on without it, he could have become a natural with women without needing any of this stuff. The seduction community of today has robbed women, has robbed the world of its men who are naturally gifted with seducing women. You had a lot of guys who come in and say, okay, this is it, this is the way we're supposed to be. And it's not. That's only one facet of what seduction can entail. There are men out there that I've counseled who are ultra-Christian, and they're virgins, and they want to remain virgins till they get married, but they just want to have great relationships with the women that they're in love with without having to have sex yet. So those are some of the people I will counsel. There's an entire gamut out there of what relationships can be. You're dealing now with a bunch of younger guys who haven't figured out what the rest of their lives are going to entail. You're dealing with impulsive youth, with the idea of, wow, I'm going to go out, I'm going to do this, and there's no consequences. And, well, that's what you're dealing with now. So when you're reading those forums, always remember that what the seduction community started out as, I'm saying this as a guy who helped found it, I'm saying this as a guy who's been there from the beginning, and what it's turned into, it is very different. And I can respect the new wave of seducers out there. I can respect the new wave of pickup artists because, you know what, it still takes work to do what they do. But up here in Toronto, I run my own seduction layer, and I run it like a traditional layer. And when somebody writes in and says, hey, you know what, I was able to get this girl to make out with me because I told her X, Y, and Z, and X, Y, and Z happens to be a lie, I'll just write in and say, you don't need to be a member here. Anybody can go out and lie. It takes a seducer to be honest with women and still find love and affection.
Having said what you just did, when you do seminars, when you do consulting or counseling with men, do they come to you kind of confused about what, because they're getting all of this mismatch of information? Is that something that you're dealing with, is kind of sorting out, kind of, I don't want to say setting them straight, but sorting things out for them, I guess you could say?
To a certain extent, yes. I have to tell you that I am not a pickup guy. I only say that because the majority of my work is not based on how to pick women up. The majority of my work is how to make relationships last.
Okay.
I take seduction-related principles, but I apply them to long-term relationships. That's my forte.
Okay,
so
but before you go on with that, sorry, hold that thought. But here's the thing that I'm curious about: are pickup artists guys who are essentially looking to get laid? And because isn't at the core, with men that you've met, isn't everybody looking for a relationship? So isn't the pickup artist just a guy who's trying to, get his foot in the door to see what potential relationships are out there?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
There's the lifestyle pickup artist. That's the guy who only wants to be a pickup artist and wants to do that for the rest of his life. Then there's the guy who wants to date as many women as possible, but his ultimate goal is to get married. and not just to have a relationship, but to get married and have kids. And then there's the guy who's not interested in dating many women. He just has one woman in mind that he would really just love to marry that woman and be done with it. So when a guy comes up to me, and first and foremost, I want to say that I don't counsel minors. And at least when it comes to things like my layer, I don't tolerate any sort of anybody who's a less than desirable person. So if somebody comes in and is a drug dealer or something, I have no time for that. Getting back to your question, when guys come up to me, the first question I ask them is, what is your short-term goal? What is your long-term goal? Because a lot of guys, especially if they're younger, and when I say younger, I'm saying, in their early 20s, all they're talking about is they just want to get out there, they want to get laid as much as possible, they want to do X, Y, and Z, and I say, okay, well, is that what you want to do for the rest of your life, or is that what you want to do, let's say, for a couple of years, but maybe, around 29, 28, you actually would like to find someone to settle down with? And nobody's ever asked them that. So they start thinking, well, I don't